The sun stretched its last fingers across the savannah, turning the tall grass into a sea of gold. Baobab trees rose above the land, wide and towering, like silent ancestors who had stood since the world was young. Their roots dug deep into the red earth, whispering to anyone who listened, "We have seen generations rise and fall." Beneath their shade, the village came alive, clay huts glowing with the warmth of sunset, smoke curling lazily from cooking fires, and the beat of drums rolling like thunder across the plains. The drums carried more than rhythm, they carried memory. Each beat was a story, each pause a reminder that no man lived for himself alone. Children ran through dusty paths, their laughter mixing with the bleating of goats. Women with strong backs and brighter eyes carried calabashes filled with water, their steps sure and graceful. Men returned from the hunt, their spears glinting, their voices raised in victory songs. It was a world woven together. Farming, hunting, ritual, and the endless circle of giving and receiving. In this rhythm, every soul was expected to add its beat, for without one, the song of survival would falter. In such a world, strength was the measure of worth. The hunter who killed the lion, the farmer who bent his back under the hot sun, the warrior who guarded the village, these were the ones the people praised. They stood tall at feasts, their names sung with pride. "A man is remembered by what he gives," said the elders. "A woman's beauty is her service. To falter was to shame your family. To fail was to become a burden." And in a land where the earth itself demanded sweat before it yielded food, there was no room for the weak. But there was one among them who seemed cursed by frailty, Oba. He was slender like a stalk of millet before its time, his arms too thin, his steps unsure. When the boys ran, he stumbled behind. When the men lifted spears, his hands trembled. Often, he dropped what he carried. A pot, a bundle of firewood, even a gourd of water. Whispers followed him like shadows. "He is useless," muttered the old women as their pestles pounded yam. "His hands bring no honor," sneered the young men. Even children laughed, calling after him as he passed. Each word cut like a blade, planting shame in his heart until it grew heavier than any basket he tried to lift. Yet there was one who never called him useless, his mother, Nia. A widow with the strength of two, she had raised him alone since his father's spirit left the earth. Her back was bent by labor, her hands rough from work, but her heart was tender when it came to her only son. She shielded him when the village mocked. "Oba is my child," she said, her voice firm though her eyes shone with sorrow. But when she was alone, her tears betrayed her pain. She loved him fiercely, yet the scorn of the people cut her pride like thorns. In her silence, she asked the ancestors why her womb had birthed a son who brought her shame instead of honor. Among those who judged him most was Elder Kwame, the eldest of the council. His hair was white, his voice carried weight, and his eyes missed nothing. To him, Oba was not just a boy, he was the son of a man who had once been a great warrior. Kwame remembered Oba's father, who had speared a leopard with his bare hands. "His blood runs through you," Kwame would thunder at the boy, "yet you crawl like a wounded rat." To Kwame, Oba's weakness dishonored not only his father's memory, but the very standards of manhood itself. One season, during the yam harvest, Oba's shame was sealed before the eyes of all. The people gathered, laughter ringing in the fields as baskets overflowed with food. Oba, eager to prove himself, bent to lift a basket heavy with yams. His arms shook, his knees buckled, and before he took 3 steps, the basket toppled. Yams rolled into the dust as the people roared with laughter. "Even food escapes his hands," one man shouted. Boys pointed, mimicking his stumble. Women whispered behind their hands. Oba's cheeks burned like fire, and though he bent quickly to gather the yams, his shame was already complete. That day, the word "useless" clung to him like his own shadow. That night, in the dim glow of their small fire, Nia wept. She thought Oba asleep as she buried her face in her hands. "What curse have I carried," she whispered. "To raise a son who cannot stand among men." But Oba heard every word. The sound of his mother's sobs pierced him deeper than any spear. Tears welled in his eyes, but he did not let them fall. Instead, something stirred within him, not anger, not despair, but a small spark of resolve. It was faint, like the first glow of embers before a fire, yet it would not be put out. In the silence of that night, when the wind moaned through the thatch roof and the fire dimmed to ash, Oba felt something else, a whisper that was not his mother's voice, nor his own. It was as though unseen ancestors leaned close, their breath in the wind. He could not make out their words, but their presence was certain. His heart thudded as if in answer, and the drums from the village square seemed to echo a strange rhythm, heavier, more foreboding. "You are more than what they see," the whisper seemed to say. The days that followed carried unease. The wind grew restless, bending the tall grass of the savannah. The sacred river, lifeblood of the people, ran lower than the elders remembered. At the edges of the fields, the crops began to yellow and wither. Fear crept into the hearts of the villagers. "The ancestors are angry," they murmured. "Disaster is near." Whispers rose like smoke, sacrifices must be made, rituals performed, or hunger would strike. But in all their fear, not one person looked at Oba. To them, he remained the boy of shame, the burden his mother carried, the useless one. They could not see what the ancestors had already begun to stir. And so the baobabs stood silent, watching, their shadows long on the earth. They had seen boys mocked turn into men remembered, and they had seen the smallest seeds break the hardest ground. Beneath their gaze, Oba's story was only beginning. The villagers gathered beneath the wide arms of the ancient baobab, their voices rolling like thunder across the night. Elders leaned on their staffs, men spoke of sacrifices, and women whispered prayers to the unseen. Into that circle of firelight came Oba, his eyes shining with hope. He stepped forward timidly, but the chatter fell to silence. "Go back," one elder said, his face stern as stone. "This place is not for you." Another spat into the dust. "The ancestors frown when he draws near. Let him not curse this gathering." Laughter rumbled from the crowd, cruel and heavy. Oba lowered his head, stepping away, though his heart longed to belong. At dawn, Oba carried a clay pot, hoping to fetch water for the women at the river. His hands trembled, but his spirit pressed on. When he slipped, spilling water upon the earth, a young man jeered. "Even the river rejects him." Others burst into laughter. Later, when he tried to mend a broken fence, children threw pebbles at him, chanting, "Cursed one, cursed one." Each act of kindness turned to scorn, and Oba bore it in silence, though his chest burned with shame. By midday, gossip spread like fire through dry grass. At the market, one woman whispered, even the gods would spit out his sacrifice. At the river, another added, "He is the shadow of bad fortune. No good can come from him." Their voices stitched together a web of ridicule that followed him wherever he went. Those words, sharper than spears, pierced his spirit more deeply than any wound of flesh. His mother, worn by years of widowhood, tried to stand tall in his defense. "He is still my son," she said, voice quivering before the women grinding maize. "Do not speak of him as if he were a beast." But they turned on her swiftly. "You raised a burden, not a son. Even your womb betrayed you." Her shoulders sagged. In daylight, she avoided walking with him, afraid their disgrace would drown her too. Yet at night, behind their mud walls, she held him close, whispering, "Do not listen, my child. The day will come when truth will shine like the sun." Tears wet his hair as she prayed silently for mercy. One evening, as the drums of worship beat, the skies split open. Lightning struck near the shrine, tearing its thatched roof apart. The sacred vessels fell, offerings scattered into the mud. A storm raged, and the people wailed, for such a sign meant only anger from the ancestors. The diviner, draped in red cloth, raised his staff. "The spirits demand what lies hidden upon the forbidden hill. None may refuse, for the ancestors' wrath will burn us all." Whispers of fear swept through the crowd, for none dared tread that hill where shadows dwelt. The strongest young men stepped forward, their muscles gleaming with pride. They marched out, spears raised high, promising to return with the offering. But when the sun bent low, they stumbled back. One limped, his leg bloodied. Another trembled, his eyes wide with terror. None bore anything in their hands but dust. They say unseen guardians dwell there, one muttered, voice cracked with fear. Our strength is nothing before them. The village fell silent, the laughter of pride swallowed by dread. That night, the council sat in heavy gloom. Elder Kwame shook his head. The ancestors demand, yet we cannot answer. If we fail, the harvest will rot, the children will starve. The curse will devour us. Another elder sighed deeply. We are a people doomed. Even the strongest among us have returned broken. Their voices carried no hope, only despair as dark as the storm clouds above. Far from the fire, Oba lay alone, his thin body curled upon the earth. Sleep carried him into a dream where the ancestors stood tall as mountains, their voices like the wind through hollow trees. Child of dust, they said, you carry more than they can see. Strength of the body is nothing without strength of the spirit. The heart that endures carries greater power than the arm that strikes. Oba reached out, trembling. Do you truly see me? Their answer came as a song, the one despised is often the one chosen. Then the vision faded like smoke into the night sky. Oba awoke with the dawn, his heart pounding. Though his hands shook, a strange fire burned within him. For the first time, he felt he was not cursed but called. He walked with new weight in his steps, though no one else noticed. Later, before the crowd that mocked him, Oba lifted his voice. I will climb the forbidden hill. I will bring back the offering. Laughter erupted like thunder. Men clutched their bellies, women shook their heads in scorn. One shouted, if the warriors failed, how can you succeed, cursed one? But Oba's eyes did not waver. His words, spoken with strange courage, unsettled the air. A few elders exchanged uneasy glances, for what if, against reason, the ancestors had indeed chosen him? Mockery raged louder, yet whispers of fear ran beneath it. Some spat at his feet. Others, though, looked away uneasily. What if the boy they despised was the one sent to save them? The question hung over the village like a storm cloud that would not break. That night, his mother clutched him tightly, her sobs shaking her frame. Do not go, she begged. They have cast you to death, and I cannot lose the last joy of my heart. Oba held her hands gently. Mother, I must. The ancestors have spoken to me. Her tears fell into the dust. Why must my son carry this burden? Why must the world see your worth only through suffering? Oba kissed her brow. Because sometimes, mother, the stone the builders reject becomes the cornerstone. The night wrapped them both in silence, heavy with grief and destiny. The circle of the village burned with firelight beneath the great baobab tree. Men spoke in heavy tones, women hummed prayers to the spirits, and children sat wide-eyed at the edge of the gathering. Into that place of voices came Oba, his step soft, his eyes filled with yearning. But the elders shifted their gaze as if he were nothing but wind. When he spoke, his words fell to the ground like seeds cast on dry earth. Elders, he whispered, I too have thoughts. Silence, barked an old man, gripping his staff. Your tongue brings ill luck. Laughter rippled from the younger men, sharp and cruel. Even the children covered their mouths, mocking him with giggles. His presence was a shadow in their midst, and shadows had no place in the circle of light. Slowly, Oba turned away, carrying with him the weight of rejection that pressed heavier than stone.
The next morning, when the sun burned gold upon the earth, Oba carried a pot to fetch water from the river. He walked carefully, determined not to stumble. Yet as he bent to lift the pot, a boy kicked his heel, sending the water spilling into the dust. Ha! The boy shouted. Even the river spits him out. Later that day, Oba tried to mend a fence that guarded the goats. But the rope was cut behind his back, and when the posts fell, the goats scattered. Women watching nearby clapped their hands in mock sorrow. "Look! Even wood and rope reject his hands," one said. Another shook her head. Even the gods would not take his sacrifice. Oba bit his lip, fighting the sting in his chest. Every effort he made crumbled beneath scorn. By evening, the marketplace throbbed with voices, and the air was heavy with roasted yam and palm oil. But louder than trade was the gossip that curled like smoke from every mouth. Women selling groundnuts sneered as Nia passed. "You raised a burden, not a son," one said, her laughter bitter. At the fireside, young warriors oiled their spears and shook their heads. "Weak blood," one muttered. "If he were mine, I would cast him into the forest." Their voices carried, and though Oba did not sit with them, every word struck his ears like a spear. The gossip spread with no mercy, carving his place as the outcast no warrior would follow, no maiden would look upon. His mother, Nia, stood one day among the women grinding maize. When their tongues lashed out at Oba, she raised her chin, though her voice trembled. "He is still my son. His breath came from the same sky as yours." But their eyes turned sharp. "Better no child than one who brings shame," said one, slamming her pestle into the mortar. Nia's strength faltered. She began to walk apart from her son during the day, afraid that their disgrace would drown her too. Yet when the moon climbed the sky and shadows softened the world, she drew him close to her chest. "Do not let their words eat your spirit," she whispered into his hair. "The river carves stone slowly, but it never stops." Her tears fell silently into his curls, hidden from the world that mocked them. Then came the night when the skies broke open. Thunder cracked, and lightning struck the sacred shrine, splitting the roof and scattering offerings across the mud. The villagers wailed, for never before had the shrine been touched by such fury. When dawn came, the fields showed more sorrow. Crops drooped, their leaves yellowing. Hunters returned with empty hands, their eyes full of fear. "It is the ancestors," the people whispered. "They turn their backs on us. They hunger for sacrifice." Fear grew like weeds in their hearts, choking hope. The elders gathered with the diviner, whose staff rattled with shells. His eyes rolled back as he cast his cowries upon the ground. "The balance is broken," he intoned. "Only the relic upon the forbidden hill can calm the wrath of the ancestors." Gasps rose. The forbidden hill was a place of shadows, where spirits prowled and men vanished. The strongest young men, proud and eager to prove their worth, stepped forward. "We will go," they boasted, their voices rising like drums. Spears glinted, and mothers sang their courage. The village clung to hope once more. But hope did not last. One by one, the warriors returned, their pride broken. Some limped, wounds seeping blood. Others trembled, their eyes hollow with terror. One dropped his spear, whispering, "I saw a beast with eyes of fire." My courage melted. Another shook his head. "The hill swallows strength. No man can climb it." The elders sat in silence, despair written across their faces. If the hill could not be conquered, then doom hovered over them like a vulture waiting for flesh. Far from the fire, alone in the darkness, Oba lay on the cold ground. Sleep carried him into a world of dreams where the ancestors stood tall as trees, glowing like embers. Their voices hummed like the wind. "Child of dust," they said, "strength of body is nothing without strength of heart. The world mocks you, yet the spirits see you. The one despised is often the one chosen." Oba reached for them, but they faded into mist, leaving him trembling with both fear and wonder. At dawn, he walked into the village square. His body was small, but his voice carried like thunder. "I will go," he declared. "I will climb the forbidden hill." Laughter exploded. "You?" shouted one man. "The boy who cannot carry water. Better you dig your grave first, another jeered. Yet not all laughed. Some shifted uneasily, for they knew the ancestors sometimes chose the least expected. The air was heavy with disbelief, fear, and a seed of wonder. That night, Nia fell to her knees, clutching her son as if her arms alone could hold him back from death. "Do not go, Oba," she cried. "They send you to perish, and I cannot lose you. My womb bore you in pain, must my heart now break in sorrow?" Oba touched her cheek gently. "Mother, I must go. The ancestors have spoken to me." Her tears wet his hands. "Why must my son prove his worth through suffering?" she whispered to the dark sky. As the fire burned low, she prayed to the ancestors, her voice shaking. "If he must go, let your spirits shield him. Do not let my only child vanish into the shadows of the hill." The night held her cries, carrying them to the ears of gods and men alike. The drums were silent that evening, as though the village itself held its breath. All eyes turned to the open square, where the great baobab stretched its roots like the arms of ancestors watching. Elder Kwame, who had once spoken against Oba with words sharp as spearheads, now stood trembling before the crowd. His staff, once lifted in judgment, shook in his hand. "My eyes were clouded," he said, his voice low, heavy with shame. "I called him a curse. I called him useless. But the boy I despised is the one who has carried us back from the edge of death. Forgive these blind old eyes." He bent low until his forehead touched the dust, and the people gasped, for never had they seen their elder bow before a child. From every corner of the square came songs, soft at first, then swelling like a tide. Women carried calabashes of palm wine, warriors laid down their spears, and craftsmen brought woven mats, carved stools, and bowls of yam. "Oba! Oba," they chanted, voices cracking with sorrow. "We wronged you. We mocked you. Take these gifts, not for riches, but as our tears turned into song." Through the crowd came Nia, her wrapper loose, her eyes wet. She fell upon her son, clutching him to her breast. my son," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I was weak when they pressed me. I turned away in the daylight, though at night I prayed for you.
Forgive me." Her tears streamed onto his shoulders like a cleansing rain. Oba held her close, silent, but in his heart, a wound long open began to heal. Then, as if to seal the moment, a glow spread from the shrine. The relic, once dark as stone, now shone faintly, warm and steady, like a fire that refuses to die. The people fell silent, their heads bowed. "The ancestors," someone whispered. "They are watching. They are pleased." Yet in that silence, a greater test came. The crowd, humbled and weeping, was ready to give Oba the crown of pride. They knelt before him, some crying, "Lead us, Oba." Others shouted, "Take the seat of honor. Be our savior." And there it was, the temptation, glittering before him like a blade, vengeance for years of mockery, the sweet taste of pride, the throne of hero worship. Oba stood still, his gaze sweeping over them. In his chest, two voices wrestled. One whispered, "Now they bow. Now they suffer as you once did. Take it, this is justice." The other, quiet but steady, spoke like the ancestors in his dream, "The strength of the body is nothing without the strength of the heart." At last, Oba raised his hands, and the people hushed. "I am not greater than you," he said, his voice firm. "I am not your savior, nor am I your master. The ancestors did not send me to rise above you. They sent me to remind you." His eyes, once dim with shame, now blazed with courage. True strength is not in the arms or the back. It is in patience. It is in humility. It is in the spirit that does not break when mocked. The villagers listened, some weeping openly. Elder Kwame struck his chest, crying out, "Wisdom from a boy I called weak." Oba stepped back, refusing the carved stool of honor that had been placed for him. "I will not sit as a king among you. I will walk as a brother beside you. My place is not to be lifted above, but to lift others with me. I will serve the children. I will teach them what I have learned. Let my hands shape the future, not rule it. Children ran to him then, clutching his hands, tugging at his wrapper, their eyes wide with trust. He smiled down at them, his voice softening. Come, little ones. You are tomorrow. And tomorrow must be stronger than today. And so the lesson was sealed. From the shadows, the deep voice of the narrator rose, as though carried by the wind itself. They called him useless, but the ancestors saw the jewel hidden in the dust. They spat upon him, but the earth does not refuse rain because it falls dirty. Remember this, the one you despise today may carry the key to tomorrow's salvation. Let no tongue mock too quickly, for words can wound deeper than spears. The crowd murmured, the wisdom pressing upon their hearts. Parents held their children close. Elders nodded, their eyes moist. And like ripples on a river, the lesson spread, not only for the village, but for the generations yet unborn.
The fires were lit, and drums thundered once more. Villagers sat in a great circle, chanting Oba's name, not in mockery but in reverence. Children leaned forward, their faces glowing in the firelight, eager to hear the story told and retold. The relic in the shrine gave one final shimmer, faint but enduring, like a star promising dawn. And under the baobabs, the village of Agbead sang into the night, their voices rising like smoke, carrying the tale of the boy no one expected, the boy who chose forgiveness over pride.